Hello, my friends. I wanted to preface this episode because it's very different than any of my other work. The footage in which I share today will be either from or footage based off of real-life events. Fortunately, it will not contain any such graphic content. However, it will contain images based off of real-life events that do pertain to the deaths of people. Unfortunately, there will be some footage that will trigger many people based off of the footage and based off of the horror that these people endured, the real-life ramifications of the people, and unfortunately the casualties therein in the acts in which these cases are involved. I will preface this also by asking, not a question, more a plea to you. Please be kind, be friendly and understanding and open, and most importantly, please don't forget and enjoy this special episode of Hyperthetical. Our country, our world, and our way of life are currently changing in ways that none of us could understand. And in this time of crisis, all we as human beings require is answers. Answers for questions, whether it's for personal calm, or it's for some sort of safety, or if it's for justification. And in this time of crisis, we turn, as we always do in every time of crisis, towards the news. Through newspapers, as well as through television, through local and cable news. We try to receive our information as much as we can, as quickly as we can, so that we can feel solace in knowing that we are or are not safe. And that leads us to today's most poignant and most current question that we, unfortunately, as a society, need to truly face. Does the news media do more harm than good? News has been an essential part of every civilized world, from ancient Egypt to our current year. And with each passing year and each advance in technology, we find new ways to receive our information from sources that we personally trust, but many a time that trust is only one-sided. Roughly near the 70s and into the current year, the news media has focused more on the negative. They've glamorized the negative. They consider it more of a matter of focusing in on the negativity instead of the information. Focusing more on sensationalism, horror, and disgusting natures of human depravity instead of information in which we as a society rely on. Through each of these different incarnations of the news media, there has been very far straying lefts, rights, centers, backwards, and everything else in between. Many times, news stations can have a toll on how it is received, as well as from who takes it, focusing more on glamorizing and showing the mass hysteria as if looking from on high on a pillar, when in reality we all thrive in the same civilization. Inserting your ideologies, religious views, and personal opinions does not, in fact, create. It merely strays from fact, and it curves your personal opinions into fact from your own personal point of view. And the news does this so frequently that it constantly has to fight itself as to its own opinions as well as its own facts, constantly blurring the lines between both and making it so hard for anyone to sift through the information and opinion. Once the suppression of ethics is more put into place and the sensationalism is overturned from whatever your personal factual basis is, it starts to become radicalized, and it truly looks horrible from the historical point of view. One of the most recent suppression of ethics is the horrifying video of Sinclair Broadcasting, where over 40 different news stations, all local from different parts of the country, repeat the exact same phrase, proving that their information is not, in fact, real. It is all loyalty-based, and it's all financially backed, truly seeing a horror for which we, as a society, need to accept and need to be able to understand firsthand.
On social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish things that simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Unfortunately, when a suppression of ethics is put into place, real-world consequences always take lives. This real-world crisis was based off of a suppression of ethics, when all we really had to do was look into our own world's history, like the suppression of the Tiananmen Square disaster that still remains today, as well as the constant changing of narratives of the Chernobyl disaster in Russia, both of which have real resonating consequences that still are felt in those areas to this very day, by the survivors and by those who experienced it firsthand, which is what many of us will become once this crisis is over, but, unfortunately, many of us won't. The way the news is, as well as the way it's told, is already a horrible enough problem, but possibly a worse problem is the lack of acceptance of fault, in which many news organizations fail to do. The old saying goes, do not shoot the messenger. However, it is still the burden of the messenger to display the information as required, not insert their own personal input. The 2016 movie Christine, about Christine Chubbuck, the only on-air anchor to have killed herself live on the air, is one of the most well-made films, not sensationalizing her death, but truly showing us the inside of how her mind worked, how the depression and how the pain of what she was doing, forced to do something that she loved and get it twisted by the higher-ups based solely off of sensationalism. And for those who may believe that that might be a bad example of sensationalism, how about the two-part German dramatic reenactment series 54 Hours, in which it follows the Gladbach hostage situation, where several men who held the Bank of Munich, Germany hostage had news reporters constantly surrounding them, constantly giving the robbers, not the hostages, any sort of support, and giving a horrible, nightmarish, true image to the ugly horror of sensationalism, when a real-life reporter with a camera and microphone asked a young woman with a loaded gun under her chin one poignant, resonating question: how does it feel to have a gun pointed at you? Over-informing can also have real-life consequences, as seen in the 1970s Munich disaster. Several men were holding Olympic athletes hostage, while the news kept reporting things between the police in which they would raid and from which angle. News reported so well that the kidnappers were able to escape with the hostages, ultimately leading to every hostage's death, and yet there was no acceptance of fault. And despite all of these things, information still is a necessity of life. It's still something that we as a society require. We need more information for each thing and each task and each personal thing that we accomplish. The more information, the better. But it really comes down to who you trust with your life. Personally, I try to look for my own information. But many people, I understand, are not able to. In researching this episode, I personally felt sleepless nights as well as guilt, anger, and a whole plethora of emotion, which I hope many of you can understand. as I'm sure many of you are experiencing at the time of listening to this. But truth be told, I may not be able to have all the answers, and I may not be able to help. Hopefully, in making this video, I'm just allowing you all to know that you're not alone. And with that, I'll leave the question up to you. Does the news media do more harm than good? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you.